Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jenny Gilbert, Miami's Associate Athletic Director and Senior Woman Administrator, and I'm excited to be joined today by Coach Carolyn Condit, Miami University's head volleyball coach. Welcome, Carolyn.
Hey, Jenny. Long time no see. How are you?
That's right. I'm excited to be here, and we're going to get to your story in just a moment, but I want to make sure the viewers get a quick introduction. With more than 40 years of head coaching experience, Miami Hall of Famer Carolyn Condit returns this fall for her 40th season leading the Red Hawks. She led Miami to a top 4 finish 3 of the last 5 seasons and to 4 of the last 7 Mid-American Conference regular season championship titles. Owning more victories than any other coach of any other sport in the history of Miami athletics, which is amazing because we are the cradle of coaches. Carolyn Condit holds 677 wins over her 39 seasons in charge of the red and white. She's the only volleyball coach in the history of the Mid-American Conference to win more than 300 league matches, holding a conference record 375 wins. And her 771 total victories ranks 4th among all active NCAA Division I coaches and 23rd all-time in the history of the NCAA sport. That is an impressive career. I also want to let our live viewers know that they can submit questions throughout the hour by using the Ask a Question button down there below the viewer. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I appreciate you being with us here today, Coach. We're excited to have you join us. You have actually lived the experience of Title IX as an athlete, as a coach. And I know you started at Miami in 1984 because I was there shortly after. Mm-hmm. And it's been an amazing career. But let's take a step back and talk about how you got here in the first place. Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up? Talk about your passion of yours. Talk about other sports, if you don't mind.
Sure. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and a little town area of Cincinnati called Madisonville. I wanted to be a baseball player when I grew up, when I was about 5 years old, because there's so many great, active young children in the area. We just had sports on our minds all the time. Went through high school at Marion High School and College of Mount St. Joseph, where the volleyball and sports just kept getting better and better. I played with boys my whole life. There weren't any girls in our neighborhood that enjoyed to swing a bat or wear a glove or whatever it took. And when I got to high school, I was excited to see that there are other girls that enjoy to play. But when I got to college, I realized that women compete and they compete hard, and there's just no boundaries to how far you can go and how good you can get with teammates. And it was the thrill of my lifetime to have a great experience at Mount St. Joseph in 2 sports that I played there. So, that's kind of it. And I ended up going to teach high school for 3 years after I graduated, and I enjoyed coaching volleyball, basketball, and track at that high school, and just yearned for more. And I knew I wanted to coach as I was leaving college. So I received my master's at Indiana, was influenced by a wonderful woman named Ann Lawver there. I was her GA, which meant her only assistant back in those days because the women were never staffed as much as the men's programs. That when I came back, all the experience and great mentorship I got from Jean Dow, my basketball coach, and Kate Corcoran at Mount St. Joe in volleyball. They were both amazing women, and they really helped me be who I am today. But I had a chance to take a job in Cincinnati, and I took Xavier University's job. They were kind enough to offer it to me. Laura Massa was the AD there, and she's a great lady and has been a fine administrator for years. The rest was history at Xavier. I really enjoyed my opportunity there very much. It was my first college volleyball job.
Yeah, now you took Xavier from a Division III into a transition to Division II, and then eventually into Division I. Did you have to change much of your coaching style at all throughout those changes and those transitions? And then if you can tell us a little bit about then that move to Oxford.
Sure. My coaching style, I'll try to keep the same from the very beginning, and I experienced it in college, is, just to motivate and work to have a very positive environment and be collaborative with the team. because it's their team, and they should make choices, and they should have the autonomy to help build success. And so that's early on how I wanted to coach, and that's the good example I had in my past. In terms of my demeanor, I think my present athletes will attest to this, and sometimes it changes. Sometimes if an individual or a group aren't working hard enough, or they're not reaching their potential because they can do more, or the focus isn't there. Sometimes you have to bring them around a little bit with maybe a more stern approach. But I've never been someone that wanted to motivate through punishment or negativity, because it actually takes away what the sport really is meant to bring to coaches and athletes, because we're all in it together. I'm not perfect at that, but I really think that's very important to avoid the negativity. But let's hold each other accountable and teach them to hold themselves accountable, and it becomes a great experience for us. I'm sorry, you wanted me to go through.
Yeah, how did you get to Oxford? How did you make your way up here to Miami?
From Xavier, okay, for sure. Well, it was a small world, because one of the top hitters in my college experience was Peggy Bradley Doppus. She ended up marrying a wonderful man, and she took the Miami job while I was at Xavier. And as she was departing, I believe she recommended me, and I was thrilled to get the call, and not sure if I get the job. And I went up to interview, and I did get the position. And it was the hardest thing for me to leave Xavier, because I loved that team. And they actually went on to win the North Star Conference back then against Notre Dame in the finals, which I got to hear about because I had left that year before. But I'm so proud of them and still stay in touch with them. But I think every coach finds that it's hard to leave a place when they leave. And it's always true, because the athletes are so amazing. So I took the Miami job, was so honored to have that offer. And I knew I needed to get a full-time salary and an office and all the important things, and the opportunity to really learn to recruit on the Division I level. And Miami was kind of had the stage set for that. So that's how I got there, with a recommendation of a friend and a former teammate.
That's awesome. Because all of us are familiar with it. It's often who you know that helps you get that next step into the next career field, or the next step up.
Which reminds me, the best decision I ever made was asking Brad Bates to consider you to be an associate athletic director at Miami. And I love the man. He listened, and he interviewed you, and the rest is history. So it's been an honor.
Well, then I appreciate that too, because it sounds like you had some help with a step up, and I am a direct beneficiary, not only of being one of your players, but of you standing up for me for this next step in my own career. So I am very appreciative of that too.
Easy to do.
And you've been named MAC Coach of the Year 6 times. That speaks volumes as a coach, as your character as a person, and as one of your former players. I'm well aware, and I know firsthand that you take character as a very big point with all of your student athletes. But tell us a little bit about the qualities you think are really important to have as a coach. What has been a part of your life and a part of your character that it's allowed you to stay here, not only stay here this long, but be as successful as you've been for so long?
Well, I a lot of the success, because you've mentioned that several times, but I owe so much of that success to the many incredible assistant coaches I worked with, and the student athletes who just gave so much of themselves in pride for the sport and for Miami. And so I'm just so grateful for all of that. What helped me, I think, keep my job and have people be patient with me is that I try to set clear standards for my teams, consistent treatment for every student athlete. I try very hard to do that. Sometimes it might be perceived differently, but that's really what's in my heart. I think it's important for coaches to be honest, to show and teach loyalty. If we don't exemplify it, it's hard to really believe it should be learned. To be humble when we make mistakes, and I've made many share of mine. To represent their school, with such pride and professionalism that, the president, the athletic director, the parents of your players, they want their children, their young women at that point to be a part of the program because they trust the coach. And so those are things that I worked for. I didn't always win everyone over, but I think trying to be sincere in that is all a coach can do. And just consistently work hard to treat each of them the same, as much as possible the same. And the most important thing, one of the most important things that I would just throw in here is to make sure that we get to know them as people and who they are and what makes them different, and what leadership they bring, because it's all different based on what player you talk to. But if you miss getting to know that part of them, it's not as much of a personal experience, and you can't express your appreciation to them as much if you don't know them in that way. And I think we do appreciate our athletes, and sometimes we forget to tell them. And when you learn about them as people, there's much more there. There's more deep layers. That's just amazing.
So you mentioned earlier too, it's not just the qualities and the leadership of the coaches, but your student athletes have to bring something to the table, and they have to be accountable to this team goal, this team culture. So what qualities do you value most in your student athletes?
Strong work ethic, the will to just work strong as much as possible, and the willingness to just to be open to change, to trust that what coaches teach, what we teach at Miami is for a good reason, to help them go to the next level of performance, and to be willing to, what I'm sure feels like a risk, to give up what they've been doing for so long. Might be a different hand position, it might be a different posture, but it really is something that we believe will help them, and that's what they signed up for. And just to be open to those things. I think it's hard to put them in priority order, but being for yourself less than for your team is very important. So to be unselfish, to put the team first, and to just have the honesty and charity and loyalty that it takes to be a great teammate. And that phrase has been on our locker room door for probably almost 40 years, because I think those are such great qualities that allow individuals to really play for each other and to be for each other. To be unselfish and accept how talented someone else is as they come into the program, well, is important, because everyone that comes in is talented. But I think we forget that. And then as they come in as talented freshmen, they make us all better, as the freshmen before them did. And how that cohesion takes place means everything. And the coaches don't have as much control of that as they think they do. It's the student athletes that welcome each other and decide that they're one and they're a group that's going to collaborate and communicate and make themselves successful. So those would probably be my top 7 or 8 that would make a big difference.
So you said that the coaches don't often play as big a role as they think they do, but it obviously has to have some form of leadership and empowerment to the women to allow them to build that team culture. So how do you, as a head coach, go about empowering those women to build the positive team culture?
Sure, that's a great question. As coaches, we can just try to create the environment that they feel positively encouraged to grow in, to thrive in at a good rate. I think it takes time. I think to set the standards of what a team culture, winning team culture, should be is important. And they've been set here. But as a matter of fact, our next team meeting is to have this group of athletes talk with the coaches about team culture and what do we need to change or tweak or add that would make it even better for what we have today. Because I think that's important, that a culture can grow and change. Otherwise, it can become really stagnant or resented by athletes. So I think that's one of the most important jobs we have as coaches, is to set that environment, communicate what's prevalent, what's really important, and to teach kids to expect tough times and to overcome them with each other, and to do that on and off the court, to have that culture that they're proud of and that they respect. And the we before me attitude, which has been a big phrase in athletics. I think that's how they can experience some amazing seasons together, and just keep adding to the culture, but by all means, always respecting it and not forgetting it. Because if you leave it behind, then it's hard. And I think the teams that won at Miami had some of the best cultures and had such a willingness to support each other that I can't hardly describe it, but it was amazing.
Yeah, when those athletes absolutely buy into that mission, that vision, that the team outperforms the individual talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I can remember watching a couple of our teams. It was like, oh my God, the other middle blockers are 6 inches taller than we are, but our middle blocker is working so hard because she knows her team's depending on her. makes all the difference in the world. It really does. When it's the team before me, you have amazing results. Throughout your time here at Miami, you've become the athletic department's winningest coach. They're continuing to win at volleyball and academically. So I'm going to do some more numbers and statistics here. Under your coaching, 41 athletes have earned a total of 85 All MAC awards for their play on the court, and 73 All MAC academic honors. It's now called Distinguished Scholar Athletes for their performance in the classroom. So let's talk about those achievements both on and off the court, how you help them achieve that success. Because I know succeeding in the classroom is tough. And at a prestigious university like Miami, it's even tougher. And then you add on a full-time job of being a volleyball athlete. So how do you encourage your athletes to balance that schoolwork during the season when you're traveling so much as well?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, to give their families and they credit, they usually come into Miami with some really good habits and discipline with them, because I see their grades in high school and they're pretty amazing. This is a whole new level. And usually when you get into your major here, you think, oh, this is harder than I thought, or this chemistry is a lot harder than high school. And it is, but we encourage them very much, my assistants and I, to make sure they get tutors, which are free, as soon as they possibly can, to definitely work ahead whenever they have the opportunities. In season, bus time is used anytime they have. We'll make sure there's study time on the road whenever we can do that after breakfast. So we try to give them the format to study. Sometimes I have to tell them to stop studying. I'm kidding, but they do. They work at it. I never have to really worry about that. I think the more difficult problem is the self-discipline it takes at this level to deny yourself maybe of that social time in that given moment when you have an exam coming up, or being organized enough to not go to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning too often, because it will catch up with you and it will affect performance. And that's where the team culture and team understanding, if I do this for me, I'm also doing it for the team, is huge. And how they I'm so sorry about that, is huge, and how much they will help each other down the road succeed because of that self-discipline. So we give them the format. We have wonderful academic coordinators. I always tell our recruits that the support system here for academics is amazing. It's layered. We can advise our athletes to death, but we don't want to do that. But the advising is there, and they just have to ask for help if they need it. And they know that it's important to our program. We go to class, we don't miss class. And I think that's helped the university and the professors respect our program for years. And I tell each group coming in, you need to do that for the next generation coming behind you.
I think that's important. That reputation is huge, is when the professors and instructors know that the volleyball athletes, or any of our student athletes, are dedicated, they're here in class, they're working hard. Then when you do have to miss class, they're certainly more flexible and helping make those arrangements. So I think what you mentioned is fantastic. It really is true.
Yeah,
but we all know. I'm sorry.
I love talking to you because as a coach, you've also coached volleyball on a college level, and you've been through it all. So it's fun engaging just like this at a public forum.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of miss the coaching days. I don't miss the recruiting at all. But I do miss being in the gym with the student athletes every day and watching them develop and grow. And especially, which leads right into my next question, because especially when they start realizing that Miami life is not going to continue forever and that they're going to have to go out there into the real world pretty soon. Talk to us a little bit about how you've evolved your approach to not only develop amazing athletes and top performers, but strong and confident women when they leave here into their career fields.
Well, I always say we get a pretty good product to start with, but there's tremendous growth. I remember it happened to me in college, and it happens to everyone. And I think every single day, when you pick a good college program to compete in, regardless of the sport, and certainly volleyball, it's one of the fastest games played on a tiny heliport pad. I think that it's important to remember that every single day they're challenged. They're challenged by each other, by the coaches, by the opponents, by the game itself. They're constantly challenged, and it can make you feel like an athlete that makes the worst mistakes and the most mistakes ever, because it's a game of errors in many ways, or you become the champion of your own brain, and you have the mental toughness and you form it over the first year and a half, whatever it takes for an individual, but you know that you can overcome those errors if you just stay in the moment and don't let them follow you around. And when these young women get out and do that in life, and I've seen it, I'm happy to say for about 35 years at least, because they're not all out there yet doing what they want to do. But we have alums that are CEOs, athletic directors, educators, principals, doctors, lawyers. They lead marketing departments for companies. It's just amazing what they do. And some of them are doing it while being the domestic engineers with their children. I mean, women are amazing. The multitasking ability for women is absolutely amazing. But the challenges are every day, balancing school and work, balancing, social life, a boyfriend. Hopefully they don't do that to their seniors. Let's make sure we focus on the task at hand. But they do. And we've had many Miami mergers that go on and have wonderful weddings and families. And it's just been a real neat thing watching it. But I do my best to just continue to encourage them, and they never quit. They're very enduring, and I think that also carries them into their future in such a good way. They're just ready for anything, and I hope they know to sell themselves in a good way and promote themselves in those interviews, because they're very, very capable to do whatever they want to do. Sometimes it's a fault of women, sometimes to be too modest or to be too shy. And I think we have to really promote ourselves to get those jobs we want. And I see them doing that more and more.
That's awesome. Can I share a personal story?
Absolutely.
Do you mind? Okay. So I was going to say, I think one of the most important lessons I learned as one of your players was accountability. Because when I'm 19 years old, everything is about me, 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 me. And you had 15 of us, me, women, right, on our team. But you helped us realize that we are accountable to not just ourselves and to our family name, but we were accountable to each other. And that you called us to task occasionally. And those were really uncomfortable conversations when you would call us into the office and remind us, these are the goals that we all said we were after, and you are not doing X in support of that goal, whatever that X might have been at the time. And one of the most important lessons I learned was that you still cared about me. You still thought I was an amazing person. This wasn't a personal attack. It was a professional development piece. It was a character development moment. Now, of course, I didn't understand that until I was gone and I was 25. And now I'm responsible for 15 of my own young women as a coach. But I really think it's such a formidable age between 19 and 22, that becoming accountable, understanding that the other thing I gained was so much self-confidence and self-esteem, because Carolyn, you made sure that we knew we put in the hard work. We should be celebrating and taking credit for the successes as much as we took on the failures. We took on the failures on our own because women tend to do that, right? Mm-hmm. It's all my fault. Mm-hmm. We just do that naturally. But you empowered us to take credit for the wins and the successes, because we were the ones that put in the work, put in the time, put in the study hours, stayed away from the parties. We should take all the credit as well, not the coach, mm-hmm. which were incredible lessons for a 19 to 22-year-old young woman. And I think those were incredible and formed me for a successful career in athletics as well. So I thank you publicly for what you did for me. And I know I am speaking for 150 to 200 graduates from Miami who played for you.
Well, you're very nice. Thank you. And when I guess when you came back to work here, I thought, oh, good, she still likes me.
I always did. I didn't always think you were my best friend.
That's okay.
But you cared enough about all of us to at least be honest and candid. You told us what you thought rather than let us wonder. You told us how much you cared by always asking us those personal questions. How are you doing in Math 151? How's mom and dad? Like, we always knew you cared, so that when you did have those difficult conversations, we knew it wasn't personal. We knew it was professional development. It was an educational moment for a young adult. And Sometimes we didn't always see that or understand that until after we graduated, but we all understood it at one time or another, whether we were here or shortly thereafter. So there's a number of us out there that are extremely grateful.
I'm very lucky to have had you around, so thank you.
Well, thanks. You do a lot of work. You're here all the time. You're traveling all the time with your team, out recruiting. You're mentoring and educating staff. You're visiting alumni all over the country. How do you find time for yourself between work and home life? How do you balance personal and professional?
I'm not very good at it. Just kidding. I'm not very good at it. Part of me is because I love my work, because I love the athletes I work with, and without putting the work in with the recruiting and with the preparation, hiring good assistants, it's just what I need to do. So I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy my family very much. I'm from a big family, and I have some nice friends out there. And I think upon retirement someday I'll have more time for that, which I'm starting to yearn for. But I haven't been really good at balancing. I'm a little bit of a workaholic, and but I enjoy what I do. So that's just an honest answer.
I appreciate that. And that's, as we start talking about Title IX a little bit, if we can morph for just a second, I got out of coaching because I couldn't balance work and life. I had my daughter in the first couple of years. It's really, really easy to just put her in a car seat. You throw her on the bus like a piece of luggage and you go, right? It was work-life integration, not balance. But I didn't have a support network 30 years ago. There was no such thing as that for a young mom. So I had to get out of coaching. I think that's one of our biggest challenges right now in terms of Title IX and keeping women in athletics, especially at the Division I level, because we know it's such a big time commitment. And I know I'm generalizing here, but there's a lot of truth in generalizations that the women tend to want to be the nurturers, the mothers. They want to be a part of that family network. And it's really hard to have both and do both well. The men coaches generally are excited to leave home, get away from the kids, and go to work a little more than the women are. And so I think that's one of our biggest challenges as administrators, is trying to find ways to help our young women, especially, stay in the sports and stay coaching, stay in administration, stay in officiating. That, even at our top levels in volleyball, I think 60% of our head coaches in Division I are men at this point. So that's a big challenge, and we're trying to find ways to support the young women and young mothers in their home life and balancing with work as well.
I agree, and I applaud the men that will look at the women to hire and take a harder look at them and understand them. And I think there's a myth out there that only men can win big. And I don't think that's true. There's just so many men out there. It seems like it's true. There's a lot of great coaches out there that are male, but it's a female sport. And it got heavily laden with men when they start paying the salaries finally.
Yep.
And want to have a fun episode sometime. Let's get on and talk about salaries and hold nothing back in terms of the last 40 years with women's athletics. So, it's interesting. The SLAM program, student leadership and management, I think that's a great major. Miami has one, and I know they're popping up all over the place. And I think gives women an opportunity to look more at every aspect of an athletic department or professional group or whatever it is for the professional sports. And so I think things are changing a little bit, but there has to be room for the women to have their families and still do a great job coaching if they want to do that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. What's your favorite piece of advice to volleyball players after you've had so many years of coaching and mentoring? What would be your favorite piece of advice?
I guess to turn back a little bit to what I said before is to go out there. You know what you want to do, or you're going to keep evolving in what you want to do after your first job, and make sure that you promote yourself with the pride and class that you should, because you have done what it takes. You've gone through the fire as a competitor. You've had the toughest days ever with 2 exams and a paper due the next day, and we're on the road, and you just pulled out a match. You've done things that most women and many men don't ever do. And to promote yourself, believe in yourself, and know that Miami University is always here for you. And this is where you put the blood, sweat, and tears on the floor, and what made you who you are today beyond the great influence your family has been for you. So don't hold anything back. Go for it. Be confident and do it in a classy way, and you won't go wrong.
I appreciate that. Before we wrap up and jump into questions from the audience, can you share maybe a couple of your most memorable career moments?
Wow. Wow.
There's a loaded question there. You better say something about my years. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, your years were the putting up with the young coach years and trying to help in some ways build the program back a little bit, because we just didn't have enough balance and enough bodies in the program when I got here. But it was a joy working with those four groups of teams as we moved in the right direction. I would say several highlights. Karen Lepley, from Jenny, from your era, although she wasn't on a team that won that championship as we were rebuilding, she got MAC Player of the Year, the first to do that, and several followed her after that. But she was amazing, and I'll take a farm girl any day, because that work ethic is something else, and Karen could play any position we asked. Our first championship in 90 was amazing. Had the thrill of winning 4 in a row with so many wonderful teams and athletes in 90, in the 90s, and again later, beginning in 2015. So it's just a lot of different wonderful things, and it's not just the winning, but just some of the camaraderie that you find throughout the years. But probably the thing that will always stand out in my mind is how courageous and enduring and proud the women that competed during COVID in the 20 season, the 21 season. I just, my heart went out to them. They struggled so much. They hurt so much for not being able to get home to see their families. People were sick at home. They weren't allowed to go home very often. And some exceptions were certainly made. But I think the character and courage that those student athletes showed, it was just unbelievable to me. And I won't start mentioning names, but they know who they are. The match that we pulled out at Central Michigan to go to the tournament, just the fight, the constant fight, and the captains working so hard to be those leaders, even though freshmen didn't always understand why they came across like they did. But we really needed to be able to focus and rebound and never quit, even though we had masks on, practicing, playing, traveling. It was just unbelievable. And I'll never forget that. It was one of the toughest times in all of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't imagine being between 18 and 22 and dealing with that. And I watched it, and it's my most incredible memory. And I'm so proud to have gone through it with them.
That's awesome. And that obviously has made an impact on you. Your emotional reaction to that. As an administrator, kind of walking through that with you too, incredibly stressful on the coaching staff as well, because things changed every day. We had last minute changes every 2 hours. So I know that was incredibly taxing on our staff as well. And for you trying to lead those 15 young women in the scariest time in our lives. We've never had a pandemic in our lifetimes, right? So it was an incredible bonding experience, and watching them grow through the fear was incredible to watch from the sidelines. So thank you for all
them every day. And I'll tell you, my assistants, Tanya and Mike, they were amazing too. I mean, they think, what did I sign up for here? they're away from home.
Yeah.
And their apartment, waiting to start up again, right?
So, right. It was hard.
Amazing. Yeah, it was amazing that everyone at Miami just pulled together.
Right. Well, we have a large number of questions in the queue, so let's get to them. Let's start off with, what's the biggest, this is a loaded question, I love this. What's the biggest difference between players today and your athletes from 40 years ago?
I believe that 40 years ago, even 30 years ago, there was not as much pressure or opportunity to play club volleyball as often and as long as it's played. They finish high school, they're trying out for their club team within 2 or 3 days now. And the wear and tear on the bodies is just unbelievable. The importance of trainers, quality student trainers. I've had so many good ones. Presently, Jen Beardsley, amazing. It's so different. And I worry sometimes about how long they'll make it physically, but more importantly, mentally. Like, you don't have to keep playing the game. Make sure you love it because you give so much to it. That's what I want to tell the athletes today. And it's amazing how some of them still love it. They can't imagine doing without it. And in this group I have right now, again, is very special because of that. But in those days, the love to play and the grit and how tough those women were back there, because they just didn't have enough opportunities to play it. And they didn't realize it until they can look now and see, wow, I could have done all that too. But they were tough. Some ways they were a little bit tougher and they were a little bit more resilient. And I'm not sure why, but I think there's individuals on our team that have that right now that can share that with others. But that's probably the major difference is the opportunities, lack of opportunities, but still loving the game and finding a way. And I must say this, the players today, the athletes today in all sports, they eat more and they have more nutrition available to them, because back then, especially for women, I think no one thought about that. I don't know how we managed playing. I remember the TB twins. I think they had how do we just, they never complained, all of you, but you had a Wendy's hamburger. I wouldn't let you have fries. I should have. You needed the carbs. I won't keep going on, but those are some of the main differences.
Well, I was just saying, you talked about the players' differences. Let's talk about the differences in the administrative areas of sport since Title IX. So 40 years ago, when I played for you in the 80s, we were really excited to have the opportunity to play. Like, we were so grateful, but we couldn't help but notice what our friends on other male sports teams had that we didn't have access to. Like, it was hard not to question, how is it that men's basketball is getting on a charter bus to go to Central Michigan and we're driving vans? Like, literally the student athletes sometimes had to drive vans because it's such a long drive. It's too much for the coaches to do all in one trip. So sometimes the athletes are driving vans. It's hard in some cases to watch that, or to have to practice at 10 o'clock at night after men's basketball intramurals because they had the priority for the gym. But we were grateful, right? What other areas and administrative pieces? I'm sorry?
That was over at Phillips Hall. That wasn't. Yeah. We just had to build our own spring season back then because it wasn't built in for us yet.
Right. I mean, and we weren't allowed to be in Millette Hall at that point in time yet, because that was the men's basketball arena. So talk about some other things. What administratively, what other changes in women's volleyball's happened since Title IX enactment?
I think getting part of the contracts that with Adidas or Nike or whatever the school happens to be using, the women are included in all of that. I think the scholarship money that's provided now, the summer school, anything that would be necessary to graduate, it's also given equally to the women as the men. There's much more awareness of that, thanks to the younger athletic directors and the men that understand that, and the women in roles like yourself, Jenny, that help keep it balanced and give reminders, because there's so much to do for athletic directors. And I know at Miami, I've always worked for those that want to do what's right and what should be done at that point. And that's why I've stayed at Miami this long. I really believe the ADs and the female ADs that have been here really do the best they can. But I think there's just a difference too now in floor time. Every place is different, but to not have equal floor time doesn't make any sense. And Miami's right there and done in a very fair and equitable way. And I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We've talked a couple of times about the support network around some of our athletes, and I know you are very active with your alumni. So if you can talk a little bit, we have a question about how do you involve your alumni in the program? What do you do to interact with your former student athletes, and do they interact with your current team?
Sure. Well, I really have enjoyed having a Miami Volleyball mentor program where I give opportunities to any of the alums that would like it. And I always say, if you haven't heard from me, let me know if you have the time and I'll get you on. But they'll mentor one of our student athletes. It might be someone in the same position they played or wearing the same number. It really doesn't matter. But I think that the relationships among all the alums and the athletes have been really good. And the alums have been awesome, sending gift bags on the bus and, Christmas ornaments and things that they don't really have to do, but they're just there to always support them or make the calls and text them good luck. And it's been really a neat process, and it helps our young women here with eligibility left and still playing to continue to grow and see what alums are doing out there. And many of the alums have helped them as they were asked, what about a job? What about jobs? And do you have any suggestions and any mentoring or advice you can give me as a student athlete? And I think that's often been very valuable to our student athletes as well. I don't have to bring them back. I invite them back, but I think they come back to meet and see their teammates they don't get to see very often, and not just in their class, but who they played with. And I hear so-and-so is having their first child, and they get to reconnect and actually hear about it in person from each other. So that's been very special. And we just have a yearly event. We have a Miami alum match, and after the Saturday night game, we always get together and have a party. And it's grown to be quite an event, and it's because they want to come back and see each other. I love seeing them. I'm sure they like to say hi to me, but they're not here for me. They're here for each other and to celebrate good times that they had, whether they were championships or just the struggle together to make the program better at that time, at that interval in time. It's all it takes. And they're a lot of fun. And it's so rewarding for me to see them as moms, just like, you have a child? I'm kidding. It's just neat to see them evolve and grow. It's just very special. And I'm very touched when they do come back, but I realize very much it's for the program itself and it's for each other. And that's what it's there for. That's what we do with alums. And I never thought there'd be so many rewards to staying in one place as long as I have, because I really had never planned on that. But it's been really great to be able to nurture the alumni group, and they've been so good to me and so special. Great time right now to say thank you, alums, because you're awesome.
And I think to your point, you mentioned that the reason we as alumni come back is because we're excited to see our teammates. But we're excited to see our teammates because you created the environment that made it special. You created the environment that allowed us to understand the meaning behind the word team. That it wasn't just about me, but we actually developed relationships like sisters. And it is exciting to come and see what your sister is up to now, even when it's been 35 years, and see what they're doing now as grandmas. Or now as CEOs, that it's really a lot of fun. And it's kudos to your leadership and your assistant coaches all through the years that have developed those relationships and kept it fresh for all of us.
Yeah. And we try to send out an annual letter after Christmas, sharing all the holiday photo cards and everything. And that's still coming. It's always hard to get it out because there's so many, but we're going to get that out again this year. It's a lot of fun.
That'd be awesome. With all of the success that you have had during your coaching career at Miami, what do you find the most satisfying about your career?
Two things. Seeing the present student athletes graduate with the degree they love and with a ring on their finger. That's always our goal. If the ring isn't there, it's still wonderful to see them graduate, and it's not their fault. It just didn't happen. But that's one of my most satisfying. And to really to stay in touch with alums that enjoy staying in touch with me, that's one of the most rewarding moments of my life.
That's awesome. So I have another question from a viewer that says that if a prospective student has the chance to play a sport, what are the reasons you would encourage them to go for it? What life lessons does college athletics offer that might not be learned otherwise?
I would say they definitely should go for it, because in college, the academics and the athletics will be tougher than they've seen previously in their life. And when you can grab onto something that's a little bit tougher and not let it go until you beat it or conquer it, then you're going to be a better person, for a better individual, a better leader. You're going to be pushed to give yourself to teammates and to communicate maturely with coaches and professors, and you're going to realize how good you are as a communicator and a leader. And if you don't have that format, you don't become very good in those qualities. So if you love a challenge and you love to be uncomfortable and to have to adapt many, many times to reach the goals you want, that's the place to go and be. And pick a place that you can be around good people and that have your best interests at heart. And the way to do that is to talk to the student athletes without the coach around, because I think they'll always tell you the truth.
Great advice. So let's look forward a little bit. What are the challenges and opportunities that you are looking forward to with the 2023 season?
That's a great one. The challenges are there's still 1 year left for many that have the COVID year to still play out. It's challenging for us because presently that I know of right now, we don't have anyone coming back, but I know that we'll be faced against a lot of teams that definitely will have experience on their team. So we're going to be better and not as young, but it's going to be a challenge to still really make those good decisions on the court and really work and believe in each other so that we can really have a chance to upset more teams or be better than them, despite the experience that they're going to have and the extra players they have on that roster. That would be one of our biggest challenges.
Can I jump in just real quick for the viewers' education? What
Yes.
Coach is talking about with the COVID year is that if they were on a team in the 2021 academic year, they lost a year of playing because of COVID. So the NCAA tacked on another year at the end of all 4 years if they wanted to stay again. And the university had scholarship money to support them and room on their team to support them. They could stay for a 5th year. And so that's what Carolyn is talking about with quite a few of our opponents in the MAC have those 5th year athletes. And that obviously makes a difference with the experience level compared to Miami right now with a predominantly freshman sophomore roster.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that, Jen. That's well put. I'm really looking forward to how good we're going to be because we have very good athletes on the team. They love the game. They love the challenges. They're too hard on themselves. So as they learn to not be so hard on themselves and just ride through the waves, I think we can be very good. And it's a very special group. I'm very excited about it.
Awesome. All right. We have a burning question from Cincinnati.
Ooh.
Skyline or Gold Star chili? Or is it White Castles?
Skyline chili.
Skyline. All right. What do you get when you go to Skyline?
Is this really a question?
It is. It's on here. One of the viewers wrote that in.
I really enjoy the small, when I was younger, an athlete, I did the large, but the small 3-way, real simple with a little hot sauce. That's all it takes.
Do you put the hot sauce in the crackers?
In the crackers?
Yeah. Like you have a little cracker, you put the hot sauce on it, eat it.
Obviously, no. No, but it's a nice idea. I can't take too much hot sauce. I have to be careful. Do you do that?
Well, yeah, because I need something to kick me going and get me and keep the energy level up. So yeah, I like the hot sauce, and especially while I'm waiting for the chili, they usually bring you your little bowl of crackers. I'm starting early.
Oh, and don't forget this time of year coming up, just for all the fans, they do have habanero cheese. They used to. It's a spicy cheese. You might like that. Yeah, this has become a commercial, hasn't it?
It has kind of, but it was a great question. I like that. We're running out of questions, so I think we're going to get to one last one. I'm trying to find it in our list here. The one last one. We're right above, just north of Cincinnati. And I know there's a lot of really solid high school play and club ball down in Cincinnati. What are the challenges maybe potentially that you have with recruiting down in Cincinnati? And what are the opportunities that you have and the advantages you have in recruiting that area?
Yeah, I think the challenges are oftentimes student athletes want to go a little further from home. and they've lived here their whole life, and this is the time to get away on a full scholarship or even as a walk-on that could earn aid. And so that's sometimes the biggest challenges. The good part is that we're a great school, and we've had a winning tradition, and that's a very attractive to many that are in the Cincinnati area. And I know the GCL is a great conference down there, but there are also other good conferences, and all of those young women, regardless of where they are, I don't know if our sport just breeds them, but there's some great students that are out there. They could go anywhere they want. And we're able to get a good mix of those, If we're not able to recruit certain athletes in Cincinnati, it's because the games become so big and so tall. And sometimes we just need taller than what we can find. But there's also been other great athletes that we vie for, and we lose them to other schools because they're that good and that tall, or that small and that effective as a libero, whatever the position is. But we still are going to challenge for them. And we so enjoy having our camps here in July. We have an elite camp and we have a team camp. And we love when we get Cincinnati area kids, Cincinnati, Dayton, over there in some Hamilton schools and Lakota. It's just a great area for volleyball. I tell people that all the time.
Awesome. I think we're about ready to wrap up. Unless we see any last minute questions pop up over there in that chat button. Any final words of advice, maybe for some young women or that are in this male dominated field of college athletics? Any words of advice that you can lend?
Yeah, I think that I know many are interested in the business area and so many different engineering. I mean, it's a time women can do whatever they want. I think coaching, like teaching, is a special calling. I've known amazing students in the business area that eventually turn to teaching in their career. It's just really something. And coaching basically is teaching, but in a different format. And if you like to compete and you were one of those volleyball players or whatever sport, I would get involved in it if you can. I love those that are out there that still will coach their daughter's club team. Thinking of Jessica Stout-Bell, who's out there, and she's coaching both her youngest daughter's team for sure. She was. It's just amazing that they can find the time, but it's really neat. But whether it's becoming officials or coaches, there are not enough women right now in the United States in those areas. And I love seeing some of the more recent young women that are in. We have a new assistant here that Bree McCombs is going to be a great coach someday. She's already one of my assistant coaches, and she's learning a lot more than she's learned before at her last stop. And, there's so many like her that I think are going to be outstanding if they just give it that shot and give it a try. It kind of grabs you and it doesn't let you go once you're into it. And then you have to learn to do a good thing of balancing your life better than I did. But we can certainly use more women in any area. And I can't encourage you enough to come out because you can do it.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to chat with you here. Just a reminder to the viewers, you can check out all of the Alumni Association's upcoming webinars on alumlc.org/MiamiOH. Thanks again, Carolyn. I'll wish the rest of you an amazing day and love and honor.
Thanks, Jenny. Love and honor.